everybody. Thank you for coming to our weekly webinar workshop. My name is Brian McKay, System Engineer here at Verify. I will be your host for today's session. We're also joined by Mr. Victor Verba, our lead systems engineer and expert in all things CCX, CDR, and see you later at the bar. For today's webinar, Vic's going to walk us through how to utilize the new Cube event grouping features in our upcoming Verify version 13.0 EFT. Also, keep in mind that these webinars are always recorded and posted within 24 hours after they occur. So if you have to leave early and miss part of it or just want to be able to review it, again, at your own pace, just check the webinars page on our website for all past and upcoming webinars. All right, let's start off with a quick overview of our company and what we do. Then we'll jump into a live demo where Vic's going to guide us through the new features. We'll pause for Q&A. During the demo, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel in the bottom right corner of the screen. After the Q&A, we'll reward one lucky attendee a $50 Amazon gift card. So hang around to see if you've won. Or if you have to leave early, don't worry, your account manager will reach out to you with that if you've won. So a quick overview of Verify. Verify is the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. Deployable either on-prem or as a hosted cloud solution, we provide industry-leading CDR reporting and call analytics, as well as customizable dashboards and widgets, UCCX reporting, remote phone control, change management, and we are now happy to offer Cisco Cube CDR reports and dashboards as well. If you have any other questions on any of our other features, or if you have any interest in evaluating our Cube offering, please contact us at support@verify.com or just reach out to your account manager. One more thing before we kick this off. For an additional fee, Verify now offers a new service that provides managed consulting services to our customers. Verify's SE team engages with you on a one-on-one basis to remotely provide additional consulting, report building, dashboard configuration, and system monitoring assistance. This is a service that provides you a dedicated Verify service engineer to do all the heavy lifting, giving you a stress-free, hands-off experience, or as much as possible anyway. For more information, please contact us and we'd be glad to speak more in depth about pricing and terms of service for our Ninja Enhanced services. All right, let's get into the demo. I'm going to hand things off to Victor now, and please remember to type any questions into the QA panel and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. All right, let me see if I can get a clean handoff here.
All right.
always dicey. Let's see. Okay, you are now presenter, sir.
All right, let's see here. All right, switching gears a little bit. Let me go ahead and share out my screen. Hello, everybody, and thank you guys for joining us again today for our weekly webinar workshop. If you've been able to attend any of our webinars so far for the month of March, you'll notice that we've been focusing predominantly on our EFT release. We're going to go ahead and continue to kind of keep these guys rolling. Our EFT release will be available to those who sign up. So if you are interested in signing up for a beta release or our EFT release, that's going to include a lot of new features, a little bit of what we're going to talk about today as far as Cube analytics, sequencing, and grouping, as well as database archiving and some of the other features, CCX audible alerts. Make sure that you head over to Planet Verify. You can get to Planet Verify just by going over to verify.com and going to our user community. From our user community, you can go ahead and join now. This is our 13.0 EFT release. Once you go ahead and join that channel, you will be able to share feedback to let us know that you are interested in the EFT release, and we'll reach out to you once that is available. Currently, we're targeted for April to get that release out. We're looking towards mid to end of April, and we expect to have 13.0 EFT available. So if you haven't already done so, you are interested in taking advantage of some of the features, make sure you pop over to our 13.0 EFT release room and sign up for that. Also, one of the things you're going to notice right here, right off the bat, if you have not already, take advantage of our March Madness bracket. We're encouraging all of our customers to pop over to Planet Verify, sign up for our bracket. We're giving away over $1,000 in prizes. Make sure you get in there and get in on that bracket. So with all that said, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the Cube grouping and sequencing. So one of the reasons that we came out with sequencing with Cube data is every call really, for the most part, has two legs of a Cube call. It has the call that's coming into the Cube, and it also has the call that's leaving the Cube. most of the time, if not all the time. So one of the things we did right off of the bat when we first released our cube was sequence the events together for you. So whether it was a single event or multiple events, you always have your answer leg. I always think of answer as the call coming into the cube, and then you also have an originate leg. That is really the call that is leaving the cube. And it has some other information, of course, if you're familiar with our cube reporting, IP addresses, peer IDs, and things like that, error message, disconnect codes. So with that sequencing the sequencing is great. It's going to allow us to automatically generate the summary together, so that way you're not counting multiple events multiple times under a single sequence. So for example, if a call bounces in and out of a cube, but under one call, that's what we consider a sequence. So for us, we can count that as a single sequence of events. All right. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to kind of summarize multiple things under one event. So I'm going to pop over to dashboard over here, and you're going to notice that I've got a couple of widgets. This is using the same logic that you currently have in your system, and then we're going to take a look at these same widgets using some of the new logic, and that's the ability to unsequence some of these events, and we'll talk a little bit about why that's important. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to pick on this guy over here right off the bat. So this particular widget is really just focusing on any type of event that I had where I received a network out of order error message or network out of order disconnect code. And this is basically just giving me summary of all of the all of the media addresses, in other words, the IP addresses that I'm experiencing this error message with. That could be IP addresses popping off to an MS Teams part of the network. Maybe they're popping off to a different call center, a UCCX, Office 365. It doesn't really make a difference. We're just really kind of calculating the IP addresses in which that is taking place. But we are using sequencing. So when we use sequencing, we actually look at the entire sequence of events. So for example, in this case, I could see 273 calls. I received a network out of order error message against this particular IP address. And I do apologize, I don't know what that IP address goes to right off the top of my bat. That may be part of our MS Teams network. So I could see I had 273 events take place. You could also see I have a 000 with over 1,000 events taking place. Now, one of the things that we're doing when we are sequencing these and looking at the entire sequence is we're showing you the IP address of the entire sequence. So if I go ahead and pop over to my reporting and just run a quick report for a network out of order. And let's do that, and network out of order. What you're going to see here is the entire sequence of the call. So we can see here are the 000s. Here's this particular IP address over here. And if I open that up, I get to see both the media address that the error message took place in, but I also see the other IP address that was involved. And again, part of the problem that we have here is this call failed on the original leg, so there really is no valid IP address that it's going out. Thus, you're seeing the 000 because we are reporting and summarizing the entire sequence of events. That's important for a lot of reasons, because it's nice to be able to see and summarize what IP addresses are involved with this particular error message or any error message in that case, and have those summarized. Because when I'm looking for troubleshooting or I'm looking for potential problems in my cube, having both maybe the IP addresses, the codecs, the cause codes is important from a global perspective. But there are times where you just want to be able to see the leg in which the event is taking place. And this is actually a perfect example, because 0000 is not a valid IP address. And it shouldn't be within your cube either. We're getting that IP address because it's failing before it ever makes that originate leg, before it ever has a chance to go out through my peer ID 200. So we're not actually getting a valid IP address. So in this particular case, I don't really need to see 000, thus the new logic that we're implementing here. And that's the ability to count individual events. So you'll notice that I have my query here. I've got 1,071 events taking place that have a network out of order. So if I go ahead and trim this down to just view the events, what you're going to see here is a little bit different. I still have 1,072 events. This error message still took place 1,072 times. However, what I'm doing is I'm getting rid of that sequencing. So now I'm not meshing the 0.0.0 in with the IP address where this actual error message is taking place. I've got a nice picture. If I export this, I'm going to get just the detail of all the IP addresses that took place. Now, that's important for a couple different reasons, and I'm going to go ahead and pop back over to the dashboard. So one of the nice things about having that is the ability to kind of get rid of the secondary IP address in some of these cases. So if I take this particular widget here, I'm just going to make a copy of it, and then we're going to edit this guy down. So what you'll notice, much like I saw in the history search, is we have the option to base this widget on sequences. That's the default. That's what your system is using now. That's what your system will continue to use as the default. But in this particular widget, I don't necessarily need to see the secondary IP addresses before the call failed. I just want to see the IP address where the call is failing. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to just events and save that. What that's going to do is it's going to eliminate some of those secondary legs or secondary events and show me just strictly the IPs that the error message is happening at. So extremely useful when you're trying to do much more of a broad search or a broad widget like this, where I'm looking for very specific events and I want counts on specific events, not necessarily the sequence of events. All right. The next thing we're going to go ahead and take a look at is this guy over here. And this guy is what I call, if you've worked with me, you know this is one of the first widgets I'll create with you, whether you're working on a CUCM or whether you're working on a cube, because a lot of times there's so much going on in those organizations that people just don't have visibility to. That's where this widget comes in. So if I edit this guy down, you know we're using our default setting. We're using our sequence setting here. And what I'm going to do is in this one, I am looking at all of the events taking place that are not normal. In other words, no answer from user, normal call clearing, no error, user busy. Those are all kind of standard disconnect codes. So this particular widget is designed to show me everything that's not standard. And what we're looking at here are, we have our network out of order. There we've got our count there, temporary failure, subscriber absent, all the things that we probably don't want happening within our cube environment. But we are looking at sequencing. So what you're going to notice here is when I copy this and change it over to events, we're going to get a small change. Now, this is a much more global type of widget. So when it's looking at sequencing, it is looking at the entire sequence of events. Like I said, both legs of the call or both events in a particular call. So if I go ahead and edit this guy, I'm going to, again, move from sequences to events and save this guy. So what we're going to see here are some changes in our statistics. And we'll go ahead and point that out. We're going to let this guy load up. And you're going to see is one of the things that we're going to do now is when a call comes through, and let's say, for example, here we go, perfect. We have call rejected. You'll notice that when we were counting sequences, call got rejected 526 times. Why is that? It's because multiple call rejections happened under a single event or single sequences of events or a single call. So what we're seeing here are 526 calls that were rejected. What we're seeing here are truly how many times those particular legs or events are being rejected. So if we take a look at the data here, we see 526, we see 1443. Now I'm going to pop over to reporting and I can show you a really good example of why we're seeing that difference here. So we're going to pop over to our reporting and we're going to look at our call rejected. I probably didn't need to get rid of that. Call rejected. So we're going to view our events. Oh, I'm already viewing events. So what we see here are all of the events, all the call rejected events. Now, what you can see, and right off of the bat, this is a single call. I know that because that conference ID is the same. All right. So if I was looking at from a sequencing perspective, that is a count of 1. Even though that particular call got rejected twice under one call, because those conference IDs are exactly the same, that is considered one sequence. So when I look at my counts from my dashboard, that 543, this guy counts once under there. But if I really wanted to see how many times a caller got rejected, by ungrouping that or unsequencing that and showing the individual event counts, I actually get to see the count of how many times that actually took place. So let's do a quick search, and I'll show you this guy right here. And let's go ahead and find our conference ID, and let's take a look at this particular caller right here. And we're going to take a look at it from the sequence perspective. So now what we see is our call rejected. This is 1 when we are doing sequencing. But you can see that this call actually was rejected 3 times. So now you can see where that grouping those events and ungrouping those events is important, because if I really wanted to get a count of how many times this caller was rejected, it was actually rejected and presented 3 different times. However, when you're sequencing, you only get to see that once. So there's benefits, there's pros and cons to be able to have both of those. One, to be able to get a true count of how many calls individually are being rejected, but also how many times something is being rejected. And that's more of the event-based tracking. So you get a lot of flexibility there. Another great use for the sequencing and unsequencing event is when you're looking at errors. So a lot of these we've looked at termination codes. That termination codes are why calls are ending. Doesn't necessarily indicate a potential error. So I'm going to create another widget here, and we're going to go ahead and focus in on the cube data, and we'll do another. We'll do another grouping widget here, and I'm going to go ahead and pick on internal error codes. So I'll just call this internal error. Oh, there we go. Let's fix that. So we're going to focus in on that internal error code, and I'm also going to group on that internal error code. All right, so now what we're doing is we're looking at all calls that are going to have an internal error code, and I'll show, well, we'll just stick with the top 5, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw a couple values in there. All right, so now we're just going to quickly set our search. Our search is pretty straightforward. We just want calls that have internal errors. So we're going to name our search here, and I'm just going to go ahead and pick that internal error code. So pretty easy search here. I'm just going to say starts with a capital X. I'm actually going to change that to ends with capital X. I think it's a cleaner query. And we're going to look at the previous week. We'll look at the current week. Let's see what we got. So what this guy's doing is looking for any internal errors. So we can see that we've got some internal errors going on. Now, again, just a reminder, by default, we are sequencing this. So if you look at my widget right here, when you first pop into it, it is not changing your current functionality. You will continue to sequence those events. So you can see multiple IP addresses or multiple errors, error codes that are taking place. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this guy, and we're going to go ahead and change over to event tracking. So now we can see kind of the difference. Now, most of these should be the same. Reason being is 9 times out of 10, an internal error is taking place on one part of the call, either the originating or terminating part of the call. However, if we take a look at this, what we can see here is there is one particular error message that's happening multiple times on a single call. So for that, I want to take a deeper dive. I want to see what event is taking place or events are taking place. So I'm simply going to go ahead and query this guy here, and we're going to pop back over to our analytics, and we're going to query those errors. And we'll look for that explicit error right there. We're going to view our results. Now we can see 15 calls with that particular error message. And if I drop these down, you're going to get to see we have our event with the error message, and we have our event without it. So now if I go ahead and change that to event-based, now we have our 16 calls. And if I go ahead and just kind of pop through here, right there, I can easily see these 2 events are the same. So this error message actually took place on both multiple times throughout this call. And if I wanted to dig further into that, I could go ahead and easily just query this conference ID and show you those events. That guy in there. I'm going to go back to sequencing. And here we go. So nice thing about that is we clearly identified this is just one sequence or one call taking place, but this error message actually happened twice. So this internal error code actually happened twice within the same call. This is a great way to be able to draw attention to anomalies within the system. Again, most of the time those internal error codes are only going to happen on an answer record or originate record. In this case, it happened twice. The call was presented to the cube. We received our error code. It attempted to go back out, came back in, was represented to the cube, and again, attempted to go back out. We can tell that by looking at our answer and our originate legs. So there's a lot of value between being able to sequence, but also unsequence those to look for different type of anomalies or just isolate your call detail down to the specific things you're searching for. So, you know, again, the perfect example is being those disconnect codes. If I wanted to find just the call legs, maybe just the peer IDs, maybe just the codecs that are experiencing that particular problem, being able to, whoops, if I could spell, being able to sequence and unsequence those events is extremely important and provides a nice clean report on exactly where or what IPs that particular problem is happening with. Rather than showing you both the IP address of the starting event and ending event, you get to see both. Same thing goes for reporting. I know we spent a lot of time in the history search and also on the dashboards. That same type of sequencing can go right into reporting. So if I wanted to see the IP addresses that I'm having this particular problem with, maybe I want to report, maybe I want to schedule it, but I really only need the detail of this particular event. In that case, I'm going to use my event-based reporting. I'm going to use my grouping, and I'm going to go ahead and group off those remote media addresses. Give some total counts, some general counts. Maybe we want to see some charts in there. Is this happening pretty frequently? Is it every hour of the day? Nice thing about that is that event grouping is also going to go ahead and translate right over to the detail. So now I'm going to get a nice list that includes just the IP addresses where this particular problem is happening. And I'm also going to get just the detail of where this particular problem is happening. So here we are. Now we're looking at the detail, just the network out of order events, just the IP addresses I associated to, where if I rerun this report and show sequencing, again, you get a great amount of information, but you may be getting a little bit more than what you're looking for. You don't want to spend your time looking for a 0.0.0 address just because it is part of a sequence. So being able to show just the events, report just the events, is a great way to help kind of limit some of that data down. Well, Brian, I think that's what I have. Do we have any questions from any of our audience today?
Yeah, actually, we do. Scott had a question. He said, will this also be able to report on QoS?
Cube data. So Cube data it has a lot of information. So quality of service is a little bit different from a Cube perspective. We can absolutely report the quality information. It's a little bit different from a terminology perspective than it is with regular Cisco data. You're going to have things like gap fill. Gap fill, if you were trying to compare to a Cisco call manager, is more like concealment ratios, things like that. So yeah, absolutely, the Cube data has the ability to report that quality of service type information, packet loss, gap fill, and things like that.
Okay, excellent. If anybody else has any questions, please type them into the Q&A panel now, and we'll get those addressed. Otherwise, we'll move on in a moment here. Let me go ahead and take sharing back from you.
You bet. Let me go ahead and stop sharing here. Can you steal it, or do I have to make you the?
You know what? I thought I could steal it, but you might have to.
Yeah, let me go ahead and switch it back. Here you go. Maybe I don't want to.
Yeah, right. You can have it if you want. I mean, that's fine. You can close it out. I'll go make lunch early. Okay. Let's see. It looks like I don't think we had any other questions. Let me just double check. And of course, as soon as I switched over, it hit all my panels again. Let's see. Let me just pull this up again. But I don't think we had anything.
Yeah, actually, I do see one pop in from Dennis. He asked if this version of Verify will merge CUCM reports and Cube CDR. Unfortunately, Dennis, we do not have the ability, and I'm thinking what you're asking for is the ability to kind of cross-cluster report CUCM, CDR, and Cube data. This version will not do that. Unfortunately, it's an extremely difficult task because the data sets are so unique. Even as I've showed from the quality of service information down to SIP packet information and things like that, there is such a unique set of data between the two, it is difficult to merge. Not to say that's not something that we're entertaining, but at this point in time, it's not something we have available.
All right. Well, excellent job once again, Vic. You cram a fantastic amount of information into a very short time, and I definitely respect that. Okay, so I think that's it for questions. Let's move on to the part you've all been waiting for. Let's find out who the lucky Amazon gift card winner is. If I can get my PowerPoint to work here. There we go. And the winner is, drum roll please, and Diana Gonzalez. Congratulations. You won a $50 Amazon gift card, or as I like to say, 2 new movie rentals or 10 old movie rentals, whichever you prefer. Your account manager will be reaching out to you with that shortly, so look for that email. And thanks again for everybody else who attended. Please tune in next week. Next week's webinar workshop is going to be featuring another new thing coming to Verify that we're very excited about, database archiving. This will allow you to archive older data into separate databases, alleviating the resource costs of keeping large multi-year databases in live production. So if you are managing Cisco in a large organization with a high call volume and a huge CDR database, this is one you're definitely going to be interested and going to want to check out. That workshop will be presented by our colleagues Jim and Dre, so be sure to tune in. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Thanks all.